My name is Frederick, and at 57 years old, I thought I understood my daughter. I believed family meant something deeper than transactions and demands. But yesterday afternoon, everything I thought I knew shattered when she walked into my living room with her husband and handed me a piece of paper that would change my life forever. They wanted $550,000 by tomorrow. No discussion, no pleas, just an order. Let me tell you what happened next, because the decision I made in those 4 hours taught me the hardest lesson about love I've ever learned. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you've ever felt taken advantage of by someone you loved, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel, because what I'm about to share with you might just save you from making the same mistakes I did. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. I need to take you back a bit so you understand how I got here. My life wasn't fancy, but it was honest. I owned a small construction company, something I built from absolutely nothing. Started as a laborer when I was 20 years old, carrying lumber and mixing cement under the blazing sun. Every callus on my hands told a story of 60-hour weeks and skipped lunches. I climbed my way up, learned the business inside out, and eventually started my own operation 25 years ago. The company never made me rich, but it provided. We lived in a modest 2-story house in the suburbs, the kind with a front porch where you could sit and watch the neighborhood kids ride their bikes. My wife Margaret and we didn't need much. We had each other. We had our daughter Jessica, and we had enough to be comfortable. Margaret passed away 5 years ago. Cancer took her faster than any of us expected. One day, she was complaining about being tired 6 months later. I was standing at her grave, wondering how the world could keep spinning without her in it. Those first months after she died, I didn't know how to function. The house felt too quiet. Every corner held a memory that made my chest ache. Jessica became everything to me after that. She was all I had left of Margaret, all I had left of the life we built together. Maybe that's where I went wrong. Maybe I held on too tight, gave too much, loved too blindly. But she was my daughter, my only child, and I would have done anything for her. When Jessica was little, she was this bright, curious kid who asked a million questions. She'd follow me around the construction sites on weekends, wearing a toy hard hat. I bought her asking me why buildings stood up and how we made walls straight. I taught her to measure wood to read a level, to understand that good work required patience and precision. Those were some of the best days of my life. We had our rituals. Sunday mornings meant pancakes, just the two of us in the kitchen while Margaret slept in. I'd let Jessica crack the eggs, and she'd get shell fragments in the batter every single time, but we'd laugh and fish them out together. Summer evenings, we'd drive out to Miller's Lake and cast fishing lines until sunset, painted the water orange and gold. She never had much patience for fishing, but she loved being out there, loved the peace of it. Jessica did well in school, graduated with a degree in marketing from State University. I was so proud watching her walk across that stage. Margaret was already sick by then, but she insisted on being there, sitting in a wheelchair in the front row, clapping harder than anyone when they called Jessica's name. That was 3 months before we lost her. For the first couple years after college, Jessica worked at a marketing firm downtown. She'd call me every week, come over for dinner on Sundays. We'd talk about her projects, her frustrations with her boss, her dreams of starting her own agency someday. Life felt normal, or as normal as it could be, without Margaret. Then 3 years ago, Jessica met Garrett at some corporate networking event. From the moment she told me about him, something in my gut tightened. Maybe it was father's intuition. Maybe it was just the way she described him, like he was some kind of savior, instead of just a regular guy. When I finally met Garrett, my concerns didn't ease up. He showed up at my door in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. His handshake was firm, practiced the kind of handshake that felt like a performance. He had this way of talking where every sentence seemed designed to impress, dropping names of properties he'd invested, in deals he'd closed, connections he had. He called himself a real estate investor. But when I asked specific questions about his portfolio, his answers got vague. He'd redirect the conversation, flash that confident smile, change the subject to something else. The whole time he was at my house that first evening, his eyes kept scanning the room. And I swear he was calculating values, looking at my furniture, my TV, the artwork Margaret had collected over the years, and adding up numbers in his head. I pulled Jessica aside before they left that night. "Be careful with this one," I told her. "Something doesn't feel right." She got defensive immediately. "Dad, you don't trust anyone. You've been like this with every guy I've dated." "That's not true," I said. "I just want you to take your time. You barely know him." "I know him well enough," she snapped. "Why can't you just be happy for me?" I dropped it. What else could I do? She was an adult making her own choices, but that knot in my stomach never went away. They got engaged 6 months later, married 6 months after that. The wedding cost me $35,000. I paid for everything because Garrett said his money was tied up in investments and Jessica wanted her dream wedding. I didn't mind contributing. That's what fathers do, right? But what bothered me was that Garrett never once said thank you, never acknowledged what I'd given. He just acted like it was expected, like I was supposed to fund their perfect day. At the reception, I watched him work the room, schmoozing with guests, always positioning himself near anyone who looked successful. Even at his own wedding, he was networking, looking for angles. Jessica glowed that day, so happy in her white dress. I wanted to feel happy too, but mostly I felt worried. The first time they asked for money was 6 months after the wedding. Jessica called me on a Tuesday morning, her voice tight with stress. "Dad, we need your help." "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately thinking something terrible had happened. "We need $15,000. I almost dropped the phone. $15,000 wasn't pocket change. For what? Garrett has this investment opportunity. It's a sure thing, Dad, but we need capital fast, and our money is all tied up right now. Jessica, I don't know anything about Garrett's investments. Maybe you should wait until your own funds are available. We can't wait. If we don't move now, we'll lose the opportunity. Please, Dad, it's just a loan. We'll pay you back in 3 months. I promise." I heard Garrett's voice in the background, saying something I couldn't make out. Jessica covered the phone, spoke to him briefly, then came back. "We really need this." I should have said no. I should have held firm. But she was my daughter, and she sounded desperate, and I couldn't stand the idea of her struggling if I had the means to help. So I said yes. I transferred $15,000 to their account that afternoon. 3 months passed, no mention of paying me back. When I brought it up gently during a phone call, Jessica sounded irritated. "We're still waiting for the project to close, Dad. Give us more time. Why are you being so pushy about this?" Pushy. I'd lent them $15,000 and simply asked when I might see it returned. But I apologized anyway, told her to take whatever time they needed. The money never came back. 4 months later, another call. "Dad, we need $20,000 this time." "Jessica, you still haven't paid back the first loan. This is different. Garrett needs a new car for work. His old one died, and he can't do showings without reliable transportation. We'll pay you back both amounts together, I swear." I hesitated longer this time. Margaret's voice echoed in my head, something she'd said before she died. "Don't let Jessica take advantage of you, Fred. I love our daughter, but I see things in her sometimes that worry me. Promise me you'll set boundaries." I'd promised, But sitting there on the phone, listening to Jessica's pleading voice, I broke that promise. I sent the $20,000. Then it was $12,000 for home repairs on the condo they were renting. Then $30,000 for another can't-miss investment opportunity. Each time the story was the same. They needed it urgently. They'd pay me back soon. I was family, and family helped each other. I kept a running tally in a notebook. 15,000 plus 20,000 plus 12,000 plus 30,000. It added up to $77,000 over 2 years. Not once did they pay back a single cent. The requests became more frequent, and their attitude shifted. In the beginning, Jessica at least sounded apologetic. But as time went on, the apologies disappeared. The requests became demands. "Dad, we need money for this." Not, "Could you help us?" or "Would you be willing?" Just statements of need, as if my wallet existed solely for their convenience. I noticed other changes too. Jessica stopped calling just to talk. She stopped visiting on holidays. When I reached out to her, she was always busy. But the moment they needed money, my phone would ring, and suddenly I'd hear from my daughter again. I felt it happening, felt myself being reduced to nothing more than a bank account in their eyes. But I didn't know how to stop it without losing her completely. So I kept giving, kept hoping that eventually they'd remember I was a person, not just a resource. My savings account, the one I'd been building for retirement, started shrinking. I'd spent 40 years putting money away, planning for the day when I could slow down. Maybe travel a little, enjoy life without worrying about the next paycheck. Now, I watched those numbers drop lower and lower, and each drop felt like swallowing broken glass. By the time that Tuesday afternoon rolled around, I'd given them close to $100,000 total. And I knew deep in my bones I'd never see any of it again. It was 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. Jessica's name lit up the screen. I answered, expecting another request, but something in her voice made my blood run cold. "Dad, we need to talk. Now. We're coming over." "What's going on?" I asked, already feeling dread pool in my stomach. "Just be home. We'll be there in 20 minutes. This is urgent." In the background, I heard Garrett's voice, sharp and agitated. "Tell him it's serious. Jessica, you're scaring me. What happened?" 20 minutes, Dad." She hung up. I stood in my living room phone, still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. Whatever was coming, it wasn't good. I could feel it the way you feel a storm rolling in, that heavy pressure in the atmosphere that makes your skin prickle. 23 minutes later, Garrett's black BMW screeched into my driveway. I watched through the front window as they both got out. Jessica's face was pale, drawn tight with stress. Garrett looked angry, his jaw clenched, hands balled into fists. He carried a stack of papers clutched against his chest. They didn't knock. Jessica had a key. The door flew open, and they marched in like they owned the place. "No, hello, no, how are you?" Garrett went straight to my dining table and slammed the papers down so hard that the ceramic bowl Margaret had made in a pottery class years ago jumped and nearly fell. "We have a problem," Garrett announced. I walked slowly to the table, my heart hammering. "What kind of problem?" Garrett spread the papers out. They were loan documents, stamped and official-looking, with red numbers that made my vision blur. "I'm in debt. Big debt." "How much?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. $550,000. When the number hit me like a physical blow, I had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. "What? How is that even possible?" Garrett ran his hands through his hair, pacing now. "I borrowed money from a private lender to invest in a development project. The project fell through. The lender wants his money back, and he's not the kind of guy who takes no for an answer." "What do you mean, not the kind of guy? His name is Vincent Cole. He's connected, if you understand what I'm saying. If I don't pay him back by tomorrow afternoon, things are going to get very bad for us. I looked at Jessica, searching her face for some sign that this was a joke, a mistake, anything other than what it appeared to be. But she just stared at me with desperate eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Jessica stood up, walked over to me. "Because you have to help us, Dad. Have to. You're my father. Family helps family. That's what you always taught me, right?" The words sounded hollow coming from her mouth. Family helps family. I'd said that countless times over the years, but somehow in her voice it sounded like manipulation. "Jessica, I've already given you nearly $100,000 over the last 3 years. Money you've never paid back. Money I worked my entire life to save. And now you want more than 5 times that amount." Garrett stopped pacing and turned to face me. His eyes were cold, calculating. "We know you have it, Fred. You've got your retirement account. You've got equity in this house. You've got the business. You're sitting on over $1 million in assets." The words felt like a slap. They'd calculated my net worth. They'd been planning this. My own daughter and her husband had looked at me and seen nothing but dollar signs. "You want me to liquidate everything I own, everything I've worked for. It's not like you need it all right now." Garrett said, his tone dismissive. "You're 57. You've got years before you retire. You can rebuild." "And what about you?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "What about you rebuilding, taking responsibility for your own mistakes?" "This isn't the time for lectures," Garrett snapped. "This is about survival. If Vincent doesn't get his money, I'm looking at broken bones at best, a hole in the ground at worst. Is that what you want for your daughter's husband?" Jessica grabbed my arm. "Dad, please, I'm begging you. We need the money tomorrow. 3 p.m. tomorrow. That's the deadline." "And no delays," Garrett added. "Vincent doesn't do extensions." I looked between them. These 2 people standing in my home, demanding that I destroy my financial security to fix a problem they created. Not asking. Demanding. Like I owed them this. Like my life's work meant nothing compared to their crisis. "I need time to think," I said quietly. "There's no time," Jessica insisted. "We need an answer now." "Now." "Yes, now. Can you do this or not?" I stared at my daughter, this person I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. I searched her face for some trace of the little girl who used to hold my hand and tell me I was her hero. She wasn't there. In her place stood a stranger who looked at me like I was an obstacle between her and what she wanted. Something inside me went very still, very calm, like a switch flipping. "Okay," I said. Jessica's face flooded with relief. "Okay, you'll do it. I'll take care of it." Garrett actually smiled. "Smart choice, Fred. I'll text you the account information. Wire the money by 2 p.m. tomorrow, and we'll be clear." They gathered up their papers. Jessica hugged me briefly, a quick squeeze that felt more like checking off a box than genuine affection. "Thank you, Daddy. I knew I could count on you." Then they were gone, leaving me standing alone in my dining room, the silence pressing in from all sides. I walked to the window and watched their BMW pull away. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, and I barely recognized the man looking back. When had I become this person? This doormat? This fool? I thought about Margaret, about what she'd say if she could see this moment. I could almost hear her voice, firm but loving. "Enough, Fred. Enough." She was right. It was enough. I pulled out my phone and opened my text messages. Typed one word to Jessica. "Okay." Her response came back immediately. "Okay means yes. Yes, I'll take care of it." "Oh, thank God, I love you, Dad." I didn't respond. I just set my phone down on the counter and stood there for a long moment thinking. Then I picked it back up and started making calls. The clock on my wall read 8 p.m. I had less than 24 hours until Jessica and Garrett expected their money. Less than 24 hours before they'd come knocking, hands outstretched, thinking I'd roll over and give them everything. They were wrong. I dialed Harold Mitchell, my attorney. We'd known each other for 30 years, ever since he'd helped me incorporate my business. He answered on the third ring. "Fred Little, late for a call, isn't it? Harold, I need your help. Tonight." "Tonight, Fred. It's 8 o'clock. I'm having dinner with my wife. I'll pay you triple your usual rate. I need documents drawn up within 2 hours. Can you do it?" There was a pause. I could hear the concern in his voice when he spoke again. "What's going on? I'm protecting myself. That's all you need to know right now. Are you in or not?" "All right. Come to my office. Give me an hour to get there." I grabbed my car keys and drove to Harold's office building downtown. He was waiting in the parking lot when I arrived, briefcase in hand, still wearing his dinner clothes. Inside his office, under the harsh fluorescent lights, I laid out what I needed. I want to transfer ownership of my business into a trust. I want to move the house into an LLC. I want power of attorney documents drawn up giving my old friend Thomas Green authority to manage everything if I'm unavailable. Harold's eyebrows climbed higher with each request. "Fred, this is serious asset protection. Are you being sued?" "Not yet, but I might be soon. I need everything moved out of my name before tomorrow afternoon." "This is about Jessica, isn't it?" I didn't answer directly. "Can you do it?" Harold studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Give me 90 minutes. While Harold typed and printed and notarized, I sat in his waiting room and opened my banking app on my phone. My savings account showed $730,000. Money I'd accumulated over decades. Nickels and dimes at first, then larger amounts as the business grew. Every deposit represented sacrifice. Overtime worked. Vacations not taken. Luxuries foregone. I created a new account at a different bank, one Jessica and Garrett didn't know about. Transferred every cent from the old account to the new one. The new account was under the name of a trust Harold was creating. Legally, that money no longer belonged to Frederick Matthews individual. It belonged to the Frederick Matthews Revocable Living Trust. Then I closed the old account entirely, deleted it from my phone, erased any trail that would lead them to that money. Next, I withdrew $2,000 in cash from an ATM. Money for immediate expenses. Money they couldn't track. At 10:15 p.m., Harold emerged from his office with a folder full of documents. "Sign here, here, and here." I signed. My hand was steady. My mind was clear. "Fred," Harold said as I stood to leave, "whatever you're doing, I hope you know what you're doing. For the first time in years, I do." I drove home. The house felt different when I walked in, like I was seeing it through new eyes. This building that held so many memories, so many years of life with Margaret and Jessica. In a few hours, it would no longer be mine, at least not on paper. It would belong to an LLC designed to protect it from creditors and lawsuits. I went upstairs to my bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the closet, packed clothes for 2 weeks, toiletries, my medications, a photo album with pictures of Margaret. I left behind everything else. At 11 p.m., I went online and booked a flight. 6 a.m. departure to Honolulu. One-way ticket. I'd always wanted to see Hawaii. Margaret and I had talked about going someday, but someday never came. Well, my someday was tomorrow morning. The last thing I did before leaving was write a letter. I sat at the kitchen table where Jessica and I used to eat breakfast together when she was small, and I poured everything onto paper. Every feeling, every disappointment, every lesson I'd learned too late. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it inside a small wooden box Margaret had given me on our 20th anniversary. The box had our initials carved into the lid. I added a photograph of Jessica as a little girl, maybe 6 years old, grinning with her 2 front teeth missing. I set the box in the center of the kitchen table, where they'd be sure to find it. Then I walked out of my house, locked the door, and dropped the key in the mailbox. At midnight, I was sitting in my car in the airport parking garage, reclined in the driver's seat waiting for morning. I didn't sleep much, just watched the hours tick by on the dashboard clock. At 5 a.m., I grabbed my suitcase and walked into the terminal. At 6:15 a.m., my plane lifted off the runway. I watched my city shrink below me, becoming smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely beneath the clouds. I turned off my phone and didn't look back. While I was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Jessica and Garrett were starting their day, confident that by 3 p.m. they'd be picking up over $500,000 from the foolish old man who'd never learned to say no. I found out later through Thomas what happened when they arrived at my house that afternoon. But in the moment, I was stepping off a plane into humid Hawaiian air, breathing freely for the first time in years. According to Thomas, who lived 2 houses down from me and had been keeping an eye on things, Jessica and Garrett pulled up to my house at exactly 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. They were carrying an empty duffel bag, apparently thinking I'd have that much cash just lying around. Garrett knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked harder. Still nothing. Jessica called my phone. It went straight to voicemail. My number had been disconnected that morning. "Maybe he's at the bank," Jessica said, "getting the money transferred." They waited in their car. 3 came and went. 3:15. 3:30. Garrett called his supposed creditor, Vincent Cole, asking for more time. According to what Thomas overheard, the conversation was brief and one-sided. Garrett hung up, looking pale. At 4 p.m., Jessica used her spare key. They walked into an empty house. Well, not empty. The furniture was all there. But I wasn't. My bedroom closet was missing clothes. My toothbrush was gone. The garage held my car, but I was nowhere to be found. On the kitchen table sat the wooden box. Jessica opened it with shaking hands. Inside, she found my letter and the photograph. Thomas said he could hear her crying from his backyard. Garrett grabbed the letter from her hands and read it. Then he crumpled it up and threw it across the room. That selfish old man. Where did he go? Jessica was calling my phone over and over, getting the disconnected number message each time. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Garrett ran through the house, searching for any clue about where I might have gone. He checked my office, tore through drawers, looking for bank statements, travel documents, anything. He found nothing. Because I'd taken everything important with me and what I'd left behind had been scrubbed clean. "We need to check his bank accounts," Garrett said. "You're his daughter. You can access them." They drove to my bank, the one where I'd kept my savings. The teller checked the account number Jessica provided. "I'm sorry, but that account was closed yesterday." "Closed? Where did the money go?" "I'm not authorized to share that information." Garrett leaned over the counter. "Listen, this is an emergency. Her father is missing. We need to find him." The bank manager came out, a woman named Susan, who'd known me for 15 years. She looked at Jessica and Garrett with something like pity mixed with disapproval. "Mr. Matthews closed his account voluntarily. He transferred the funds to another institution. I cannot and will not tell you where. Now please leave before I call security." They tried my business next. Thomas was there, having taken over management per the power of attorney. He told them I was on an extended vacation, and he had no idea when I'd return. When Garrett demanded to know where I'd gone, Thomas just smiled and said, "That's Frederick's private business." By the time evening fell, Jessica and Garrett were sitting in their car, in my empty driveway. The reality of the situation sinking in. I wasn't coming back. The money was gone. Their plan had failed spectacularly. Jessica went back into the house and retrieved the crumpled letter from where Garrett had thrown it. She smoothed it out and read it again, this time slowly. Meanwhile, I was checking into a small beachfront rental in Maui, feeling the ocean breeze on my face, listening to waves crash against the shore, and experiencing peace for the first time in what felt like forever. My first week in Hawaii passed in a blur of new experiences. I woke each morning to sunlight streaming through bamboo blinds and the sound of seabirds calling. No alarm clocks, no obligations, just the gentle rhythm of island life. I'd rented a small one-bedroom cottage about 50 yards from the water. Nothing fancy, but it had everything I needed. A porch where I could sit and watch the ocean. A tiny kitchen where I learned to cook fresh fish from the local market. Peace. Blessed, uncomplicated peace. The first few days I thought about Jessica constantly, wondered if she'd found my letter, wondered if she understood why I'd left, wondered if she was okay. The worry gnawed at me, old habits dying hard. I'd spent so many years putting her needs above my own that not knowing felt like missing a limb. But slowly, gradually, the worry faded. Or maybe I just learned to live with it. I realized that Jessica was an adult, fully capable of handling her own problems. The world wouldn't end just because I wasn't there to fix everything for her. I started taking morning walks along the beach, getting up with the sunrise, and letting my feet sink into the cool, wet sand. I'd never been much of a beach person before, too busy working, building, providing. But now I had time to notice how the light changed from pink to gold to white as the sun climbed higher. Time to watch pelicans dive for fish. Time to simply exist, without purpose or deadline. About 2 weeks in, I met an older gentleman named Robert at a local coffee shop. He was 73, retired from teaching, and had moved to Maui 5 years earlier after his wife passed. We started talking about the weather as strangers do, and ended up spending 3 hours on the cafe patio discussing life loss and starting over. "You've got that look," Robert said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "What look? The look of someone running from something, or maybe running towards something. Hard to tell which." I found myself telling him the whole story. Jessica Garrett. The money, my escape. He listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You did the right thing." Did I? Sometimes I wonder if I just abandoned her when she needed me most. She didn't need you. She needed your wallet. There's a difference, and you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Believe me, I spent 40 years teaching teenagers. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can show someone the right path, but you can't force them to walk it. His words settled something in me. I wasn't a bad father for setting boundaries. I was just finally learning a lesson I should have learned years ago. Through Robert, I met others. A community of retirees and semi-retirees who'd found their way to this island for various reasons. Claire, a 61-year-old former teacher who'd left Montana after her divorce. David and Lynn, a couple in their late 60s, who'd sold everything to buy a sailboat and were living their dream. All of them had stories of lives left behind, mistakes learned from new chapters begun. I started joining them for weekly dinners at a local restaurant. We'd sit on the outdoor patio, eating fresh-caught mahi-mahi and drinking beer, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt like I belonged somewhere. One evening, about 3 months after I'd arrived, Claire and I stayed late after the others had gone home. We walked along the beach under a sky full of stars. "You're different from when you first got here," she observed. "How so?" "Lighter. Like you've been carrying a heavy pack and finally set it down." She was right. The constant weight I'd felt for years, the obligation and guilt and exhaustion, had lifted. I still thought about Jessica, still loved her, but I no longer felt responsible for every choice she made. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Do you regret leaving?" I thought about it carefully. No, I regret that it had to happen. I wish things had been different. But leaving that saved my life. Not literally, maybe, but in every way that matters. Claire took my hand as we walked. It surprised me, that simple gesture, but it felt natural. Easy. Like the beginning of something I hadn't expected, but welcomed anyway. About 4 months in, I started a small business. Nothing fancy, just something to keep me occupied. I'd always enjoyed woodworking, and I started making simple furniture pieces. Tables, chairs, picture frames. I sold them at a local artisan market on weekends. The money was modest, but I didn't need much. Between my protected savings earning interest and this small income, I was more than comfortable. The work felt good, creating something with my hands without the pressure of payroll and contracts and deadlines. This was woodworking for joy, not survival. Then, about 6 months after I'd left, I received an email through Thomas. He'd been forwarding only essential communications, filtering out anything from Jessica or Garrett. But this one, he said I needed to see. It was from Jessica. Just her, not Garrett. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I stared at those words for a long time before opening the email. My hand hovered over the mouse, hesitant. Part of me didn't want to read it, didn't want to open that door again. But I couldn't help myself. The email was long, several paragraphs of text that poured out in what felt like one continuous breath. She told me everything. Vincent Cole didn't exist. The debt was fake. Garrett had made it all up as a scheme to get my money. They'd planned it for months, calculating how much I was worth, figuring out the story that would work. Jessica admitted she'd gone along with it, convinced herself it was okay, because you're family, and you'd want to help. But after I disappeared, everything fell apart. Garrett's real debts, the ones he'd actually accumulated through failed investments and reckless spending, caught up with him. Creditors came calling. Their fancy condo got foreclosed on. The BMW got repossessed. Garrett blamed Jessica for the plan's failure. Said if she'd been more convincing, I would have stayed. They fought constantly. Finally, 3 weeks before she wrote the email, he'd left her. Just packed his things one night while she was at work and disappeared. She hadn't heard from him since. Now Jessica was living in a tiny studio apartment, working retail at a clothing store, barely making rent. She'd lost everything. The fake lifestyle they'd built on borrowed money, and my generosity had collapsed. The email ended with an apology that felt genuine, in a way her previous words never had. She said she understood if I never wanted to see her again. She didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she finally understood what she'd done, and she was sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I read the email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. The beach was empty that evening, the sun setting in brilliant shades of orange and purple. I walked for over an hour thinking about everything. About Jessica as a little girl. About the woman she'd become. About the person she might still grow into. I thought about Margaret, about what she would want me to do. I could almost hear her voice. "She needs to find her own way, Fred. You can't do it for her, but you also can't abandon her completely. There's a middle ground. Find it." A week later, I wrote back. I told Jessica I'd received her email, and I appreciated her honesty. I told her I wasn't ready to come back yet. Maybe not ever. This life I'd built in Hawaii, it was mine, and I wasn't giving it up. But I also told her I didn't hate her. I was disappointed, hurt, betrayed. But I still loved her, because you don't stop loving your child just because they make terrible choices. I told her to keep working, keep growing, keep learning, to figure out who she was without Garrett, without my money, without anyone else defining her, to build something real for herself. I said maybe someday we could talk, really talk, not about money or mistakes, but about moving forward. But that day wasn't today. I ended the letter with something Margaret used to say, "You're stronger than you think. Now prove it." After I sent the email, I felt lighter, not forgiven necessarily, not reconciled, but no longer weighed down by anger. I'd said what needed saying, set the boundary that needed setting, and let the rest go. Claire and I became closer over the following months. We started spending most of our time together, falling into an easy companionship that felt nothing like the relationships I'd had before. With Margaret, there'd been passion and partnership and the intensity of building a life together. With Claire, there was peace, understanding. Two people who'd been through enough life to know what mattered and what didn't. We didn't talk about marriage or making plans. We just enjoyed each day as it came. Some evenings we'd cook dinner together in my cottage. Other nights we'd walk into town for live music. Weekends we'd drive around the island exploring beaches and hiking trails. "You're good for me," I told her one night as we sat on my porch watching the stars. "You're good for yourself," she corrected. "I'm just lucky enough to be here while you figure that out." She was right. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defining myself by what I could provide for others. I was just Frederick, flawed learning trying. And that was enough. A year after I left, Thomas sent me a brief update. Jessica had reached out to him asking if he knew how to contact me. He'd told her he'd pass along a message if she wanted. She'd simply asked him to tell me she was doing okay. Working 2 jobs now, had her own apartment, no longer relying on anyone else. She didn't ask for money, didn't ask me to come back, just wanted me to know she was surviving. Thomas said she looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more solid, like she'd finally grown into herself. I was glad. Not happy about what she'd gone through, but glad she was learning. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the most valuable ones. As for me, I was thriving. My little furniture business was growing. I'd started teaching woodworking classes at a community center, sharing skills with others, the way I'd once tried to share them with Jessica all those years ago. Claire and I had moved in together, her cottage, combining with mine, to create a life that felt full without being complicated. I thought about going back sometimes, visiting my old town, seeing my old house. But every time the thought crossed my mind, I'd look around at the life I'd built here and realize I didn't need to go back. Everything I needed was right here. At 58 years old, I finally learned the lesson I should have learned decades ago. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction. And it doesn't help the people you love either. It just enables them to never grow up, never face consequences, never become who they're capable of being. I spent so many years trying to be the perfect father, giving everything, sacrificing everything. I thought that's what love meant. I thought if I just gave enough, tried hard enough, loved fiercely enough, everything would work out. But I was wrong. Love also means knowing when to step back, when to let someone fall so they can learn to stand on their own. When to say no, even when saying no tears your heart in half. The hardest thing I ever did was walking away that day, getting on that plane. Leaving Jessica to face the consequences of her choices without me there to cushion the fall. Every instinct I had screamed at me to turn around to fix it to make it better. But I didn't. And that decision saved both of us. It saved me from becoming a bitter, depleted shell of a person bled dry by someone who saw me as nothing more than a resource. It gave me back my life, my peace, my sense of self. And it saved Jessica too, though she might not have seen it that way at first. It forced her to grow up, to take responsibility, to learn that actions have consequences, and that other people can't always rescue you from your own mistakes. I'm not saying I did everything right. Maybe I should have set boundaries sooner. Maybe I should have said no the first time they asked for money. Maybe I should have seen the warning signs earlier and acted on them. But I did the best I could, with the understanding I had at the time. And when I finally realized what was happening, I found the strength to change course. That's all any of us can do. These days, Jessica and I exchange emails every few weeks. Short messages. Nothing deep. She tells me about her job, her tiny apartment, the pottery class she's taking. I tell her about Hawaii, about Claire, about the table I'm building for a client. We're civil, sometimes even warm. But we're not what we used to be, and maybe we never will be again. And I've made peace with that. Some relationships don't survive their breaking point. Some cracks can't be fully mended. The best you can do is acknowledge the damage, learn from it, and move forward as best you can. If you're listening to this, and you see yourself in my story, if someone in your life is draining you, dry, taking everything while giving nothing back, I want you to hear this clearly. Saying no isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Protecting yourself isn't abandonment. You matter. Your life matters. Your peace matters. Your happiness matters. And you don't have to sacrifice all of those things to prove you love someone. Real love is balanced. It flows both ways. It respects boundaries. It doesn't demand everything and give nothing. And if someone in your life can't understand that if they see your boundaries as betrayal instead of self-preservation, then they're not showing you love. They're showing you what they think you owe them. You don't owe anyone your destruction, not even family, especially not family. I learned that lesson late, but I learned it well, and now I'm living proof that it's never too late to start over. To choose yourself. To build a life that feels like yours instead of something you're enduring for someone else's benefit. The last time I stood on the beach watching the sunset, I thought about calling Jessica, about inviting her here, about trying one more time to bridge the gap between us. But then I realized something important. I don't need to rush. Life has a way of working things out in its own time. Or not. And either way, I'll be okay. Because for the first time in my adult life, I'm not living for someone else's expectations. I'm not sacrificing myself on the altar of obligation. I'm not measuring my worth by how much I can give until there's nothing left. I'm just living. Really, truly living. Waking up each morning grateful for another day. Going to sleep each night at peace with my choices. Creating things with my hands. Loving someone who loves me back in healthy ways. Being exactly who I am without apology. And you know what? That's enough. I'm enough. Just as I am. Without needing to prove it by setting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. That's the lesson I learned too late, but treasured deeply. I hope you learn it sooner than I did. I hope you find the courage to set boundaries before you've given so much away that you don't recognize yourself anymore. You deserve a life that's yours. You deserve relationships that lift you up instead of bleeding you dry. You deserve to be seen as a person, not a resource. And if the people in your life can't give you that, then you deserve to walk away and find people who can. It won't be easy. It might be the hardest thing you ever do. But on the other side of that hard choice is freedom, peace, a life that finally feels like it belongs to you. Trust me, I'm living it, and it's better than anything I left behind. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where family or friends took advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it helped you see your own situation more clearly, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about life, family, and the hard lessons we all have to learn. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you write your own ending, whatever that looks like for you. May you find the courage to choose yourself when you need to most. Take care, and remember, you're worth protecting.